What happens when the weakest becomes the mightiest? For Sarah Blackthorne, life had always been measured in whispers and shadows. An Omega in the Silvercrest pack, she'd learned early that her place was at the bottom, serving, obeying, invisible. For 23 years, she'd kept her head down, her scent muted with herbs, her eyes on the ground whenever an alpha passed. She cleaned the pack house, tended the gardens, and dreamed of nothing because dreams were dangerous for wolves like her. But when Alpha Donovan Kane stood before the entire pack on the night of the harvest moon and rejected her as his fated mate, severing their bond with a ceremonial blade across his palm, while the moon goddess herself bore witness, everything changed. The pain was exquisite, the humiliation absolute. And what happened next? No one was prepared for. Because Sarah Blackthorne wasn't weak, she'd been caged, and the bars were finally breaking. The ceremony had been perfect. Too perfect. Sarah had known something was wrong the moment Beta Marcus summoned her to the Great Hall 3 hours before moonrise. She'd been elbow-deep in dishwater, her brown hair escaping its braid, her worn dress still damp from the afternoon's laundry. The scent of lavender and morning dew, her natural signature, the one she couldn't quite suppress, had drawn Marcus's nose to wrinkle in distaste. "Alpha wants you," he'd said. Nothing more. Now she stood in the center of the ceremonial circle, surrounded by 300 wolves. The autumn air carried the mingled scents of the pack, forest and fur, smoke and earth. Torches blazed around the clearing, casting dancing shadows across faces she'd known her entire life. Not one showed her kindness. Alpha Donovan Kane was magnificent. At 6'5", with shoulders broad enough to block out the moon, he embodied everything an alpha should be. His scent, forest mixed with embers, ozone crackling like a coming storm, and cold steel, dominated the space. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing the sharp planes of his face, and his eyes glowed amber with his wolf's presence. The user prompt is empty, so I cannot determine the primary language. However, based on the thinking block alone, here is my summary. Orchestrated dramatic narrative arc with interconnected emotional elements. Good start. I need to build the rejection scene carefully with all the required elements: the ceremony, the mate bond, the public humiliation, physical pain. Let me continue with the rejection, and then her being cast out. He'd been pacing around her for 5 minutes, letting the pack see, letting them scent the truth. Because despite everything, despite her lowly status, despite the way pack members had tormented her since childhood, despite her parents' cold distance, the moon goddess had chosen her as Donovan's fated mate. The bond hummed between them, a golden thread only they could feel. It had snapped into place on her 18th birthday, but Sarah had hidden it, terrified. And somehow, Donovan had hidden it too. Until tonight. "The moon goddess," Donovan announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the clearing, "in her infinite wisdom, has made a mistake." The pack stirred. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Sarah's wolf whimpered inside her, so faint she could barely hear it. Her wolf had always been weak, barely able to manifest enough for her to shift. The transformations left her smaller than even teenage wolves, her fur a dull gray-brown, her strength pathetic. "I have been blessed with strength," Donovan continued, "with leadership, with the alpha bloodline of 7 generations, and my mate, my fated mate," he spat the words like poison, "is an Omega, not just any Omega, the weakest wolf in Silvercrest pack history." Laughter erupted, harsh, cruel laughter. Sarah kept her eyes down, her hands trembling. The scent of fear rolled off her, and she hated herself for it. "Alpha Donovan," Elder Thorne stepped forward, his ancient voice gravelly. "The moon goddess's choice cannot be. I reject her." Donovan pulled a ceremonial blade from his belt. The silver gleamed in the torchlight. "Before the pack, before the moon, I, Donovan Kane, Alpha of Silvercrest, reject Sarah Blackthorne as my mate and Luna." Time stopped. The bond between them, that golden, precious thing, began to fray. Donovan drew the blade across his palm. His blood, thick and dark, dripped onto the sacred ground. "I sever this bond. I choose my own path. I choose strength." He looked directly at Sarah for the first time that night, and his eyes were empty of everything but disgust. Then he turned to the crowd. "I choose Leora Stormwood as my mate." A beautiful woman stepped from the crowd, her long black hair shining like silk, her figure curved and powerful. She was Beta-born, a warrior, everything an Alpha's mate should be. Her scent, cinnamon mixed with iron and something sharp like blood, wafted through the clearing as she moved to Donovan's side with a smile that was all victory. The bond shattered. Sarah collapsed to her knees, a scream tearing from her throat. It felt like her chest was being ripped open, like someone had reached inside and torn out her heart while it was still beating. Fire raced through her veins, burning, destroying, unmaking everything she was. The pain was beyond words, beyond thought. She vaguely heard Leora's laughter, high and bright, felt the pack's disdain wash over her in waves, saw her parents, Matthias and Ilana Blackthorne, standing in the crowd, their faces carefully blank. "Remove her," Donovan ordered. Guards seized her arms, Beta Quinn and his brother Reed, both reeking of satisfaction. They dragged her upright, and Sarah's legs wouldn't hold her. Everything hurt. The mate bond, even rejected, still tried to reach for Donovan, tried to heal what had been broken, and the attempt was agony. "Wait!" Donovan's voice cut through her haze of pain. He approached, leaning close enough that his scent overwhelmed her. "You will leave Silvercrest territory by dawn. If you're found here after sunrise, you'll be executed as a rogue. Do you understand?" Sarah couldn't speak, could barely breathe. I said, "Do you understand?" His alpha command crashed over her, forcing her wolf to submit even as it whimpered in pain. Yes, Alpha," she managed. "Good." He straightened. "And Sarah, don't come back. There's nothing for you here. There never was." The guards dragged her toward the edge of the clearing. Sarah's eyes found her parents in the crowd. Her mother looked away. Her father's jaw was tight, but he made no move to help her. "Please," Sarah whispered, reaching for them. "Mother. Father. Please." Elena Blackthorne turned her back. The guards threw Sarah beyond the torchlight, into the darkness of the forest. She landed hard, pain screaming through her shoulder. Behind her, the pack began to cheer. Someone called for music. The ceremony continued without her, transforming from rejection to celebration as Donovan claimed Leora instead. Sarah lay in the dirt, broken and bleeding from where she'd scraped her hands, and let the darkness take her. She woke to cold, bone-deep, soul-stealing cold. Sarah's eyes cracked open to find herself at the edge of Silvercrest territory, still wearing the thin ceremonial dress they'd forced her into. No coat, no supplies, no food. The forest stretched before her, dark and endless. Behind her, the warmth of pack lands, the glow of the Great Hall, the life she'd known. Banished. The sky overhead was turning gray with pre-dawn light. She had minutes, maybe an hour, before Donovan's deadline passed, and she became fair game for any pack wolf to kill. Sarah forced herself to stand. Her body screamed in protest. The bond severing had left her feeling hollowed out, like someone had scooped out her insides and left only a shell. Her wolf was silent, so quiet she feared it had died. She stumbled into the forest. The borderlands between pack territories were dangerous, even for strong wolves. For an Omega, alone in late autumn as winter storms gathered on the horizon, they were a death sentence. Sarah walked because stopping meant dying now instead of later, and some stubborn part of her refused to give Donovan the satisfaction. Her bare feet bled on the frozen ground. Her breath came in clouds. The scent of snow hung heavy in the air. She didn't know where she was going. Away. Just away. Hours passed. The sun rose, weak and pale. Sarah's movements became mechanical. Step. 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 Her mind drifted, memories surfacing unbidden. Her childhood, always apart from other pups. Her mother's disappointed sighs. Her father's closed-off expression. The way other Omegas at least had each other. But Sarah had always been separate, weaker, wrong somehow. She'd thought, foolishly, desperately, that the mate bond might change things, that Donovan might see her, really see her, and she'd finally belong somewhere. Instead, he'd looked at her and chosen humiliation. The storm hit at midday. One moment, gray clouds. The next, a wall of white. Wind shrieked through the trees, carrying ice and snow that cut like claws. The temperature plummeted. Sarah's thin dress might as well have been paper. She tried to shift, to let her wolf's fur protect her, but her wolf wouldn't rise. Too weak, too damaged, too broken. I'm going to die out here, she realized. The thought was almost peaceful. She stumbled forward, no longer sure if she was moving toward anything or just moving. The world became white. Her hands went numb, her feet stopped hurting, which she knew was bad, but she couldn't remember why. Through the storm, she glimpsed something dark, a structure. Sarah pushed toward it, hope flaring painfully in her chest. An old barn, half collapsed, its roof mostly gone, but 3 walls still standing. Abandoned decades ago, probably, when the human farms had been bought out by pack lands. She crawled inside and collapsed in the corner, where 2 walls met, curling into herself. The walls blocked some of the wind. Not enough, but some. Snow drifted through the broken roof, gathering in corners, building drifts. This is it, Sarah thought. This is where I die. She was 23 years old. She'd never been kissed, never traveled beyond pack lands, never finished the book she'd hidden under her mattress, never told Donovan, back when she'd thought the bond might matter, that she'd loved him since she was 16, before either of them knew they were mates. The cold seeped deeper. Her shivers stopped, which she knew meant her body was giving up. Her eyes drifted closed. I'm sorry, she thought, to no one. To everyone. To the moon goddess who'd given her a gift she wasn't strong enough to accept. I'm sorry I wasn't enough. Darkness took her, and this time, she didn't wake. Or so she thought. Warmth. That was the first thing she felt. Not the burning warmth of fire, but the living warmth of bodies pressed close, of fur and breath and beating hearts. Sarah's consciousness drifted. She was dying, probably. This was a dream, a hallucination brought on by freezing to death. But the warmth persisted, and with it, sound, breathing. Multiple sources surrounding her. Heartbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. She managed to crack her eyes open. Wolves, massive wolves, each one larger than any alpha she'd ever seen, formed a circle around her. Their bodies pressed close, sharing heat, their fur thick and silver-gray in the dim light filtering through the broken barn. Sarah counted them. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 enormous wolves surrounded her, keeping her alive with their body heat, protecting her from the storm that still raged outside. Her mind struggled to process this. Wolves this size didn't exist. The largest alphas topped out at maybe 300 pounds in wolf form. These creatures were easily twice that, their shoulders level with her head even as she sat. Their eyes glowed in the darkness, gold and silver and amber, ancient and knowing. One wolf, larger than the rest, sat directly in front of her. His fur was darker, storm gray with silver streaks. His eyes were the pale blue of winter ice. He watched her with an intelligence that made her breath catch. "What?" she tried to ask, but her throat was too dry. The large wolf stood. The others remained, keeping her warm as he stepped back and shifted. The transformation was nothing like Sarah had ever seen. It was fluid, graceful, taking only seconds. Bones flowed like water. Fur receded into skin. And then a man stood before her. Tall, broad-shouldered, his body marked with scars that spoke of countless battles. He looked to be in his 40s, though with wolves, age was difficult to tell. His hair was dark, shot through with silver, his jaw sharp, his presence authority. Pure, undeniable authority rolled off him in waves. His scent, aged oak mixed with winter snow, pine, and the sharp, clean smell of an incoming storm, filled the space, primal and powerful. He pulled on pants from a pack near the wall, then knelt before her, his pale eyes level with hers. "Welcome back, little one," he said, his voice a deep rumble like distant thunder. "We've been waiting for you." Sarah's mind reeled. We're waiting. My name is Corin." He smiled, and it transformed his harsh face into something almost gentle. "Commander of the Unchained. And you, Sarah Blackthorn, are the one we've spent 5 centuries searching for." "I don't understand." "You will." Corin gestured to the wolves surrounding her. "My guard protected you through the night. The storm was severe. You would have died." "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would you save me?" "Because the prophecy foretold your coming." Corin's expression grew serious. "Because the moon goddess herself commanded us to watch and wait. Because you, little Omega, who was cast aside and broken, are destined to become the Golden Luna, the one who will rise when all others fall." Sarah shook her head. "You're wrong. I'm nobody. I'm weak. My own mate rejected me." "That fool," Corin said, and there was steel in his voice now, "didn't just make a mistake. He didn't just reject his mate. He shattered the binding that's kept your true power locked away since you were an infant. And now, Sarah Blackthorn, you're about to discover who you really are." The wolves around her shifted, one by one, revealing 9 more warriors, 5 men and 4 women, all bearing scars, all watching her with expressions that mixed reverence and anticipation. "I don't understand," Sarah repeated, but her wolf stirred inside her. For the first time since the rejection, she felt it move, not weakly, not tentatively, like something waking up after a very long sleep. "Your parents," Corin said quietly, "bound your power when you were born. They were afraid. The pack would have killed you if they'd known what you were. So they hired a witch to suppress your wolf, to make you seem weak, insignificant. They thought they were saving you." Ice flooded Sarah's veins. "They... what?" "The binding required a magical anchor, something to hold it in place. Your fated mate bond was that anchor. When Donovan Kane rejected you, when he severed that bond." Corin's eyes glowed golden. "He broke the spell." Inside Sarah, her wolf growled, actually growled, low and powerful and nothing like the weak whimper she'd known all her life. "No," Sarah whispered. "That's not possible, isn't it?" A woman stepped forward, tall and lean, with short auburn hair and amber eyes. Her scent carried notes of sage and summer rain. "My name is Thalia. I'm pack healer. I can show you the truth if you'll let me." Sarah stared at them all. 10 warriors, each radiating power that made Donovan look like a pup. They stood in this abandoned barn in the middle of a blizzard, surrounding her, protecting her, claiming she was someone important. It was insane. But her wolf was awake, and it was angry. "Show me," Sarah said. Thalia's healing abilities allowed her to see magical bindings. She placed her hands on either side of Sarah's head, and her eyes began to glow pure white. "Moon goddess," Thalia breathed. The binding was intricate, masterwork. But look, here and here, the breaks where the mate bond was anchored. It's unraveling. Sarah felt it, like threads pulling loose inside her chest, in her mind, wrapped around her very soul. With each thread that snapped free, she felt something else rising to take its place. Power. Raw, untamed, immense power. "Your parents will answer for this," Corin said softly. "But not today. Today, you need to understand what you are." "What am I?" Sarah's voice shook. One of the male warriors, this one young with dark skin and bright green eyes, grinned. "You're about to find out. Name's Jax, by the way. This is going to be incredible to watch." Another warrior, a woman with silver blonde hair and scars across her face, rolled her eyes. "Tactful as always, Jax." She looked at Sarah. "I'm Nessa. Don't be afraid. The first shift after the binding breaks is intense. But we're here." "First shift?" Sarah's heart raced. "I've shifted before, many times. I'm just small." "That wasn't you," Thalia said gently, her hands still glowing. "That was the binding allowing just enough of your wolf through to pass as normal. What's coming now?" She smiled. "This is you." The last thread snapped. Sarah gasped as power flooded through her. Every cell in her body ignited. Her wolf surged forward. No longer a weak whisper, but a roar of fury and joy and freedom. "Who are you?" Sarah thought at her wolf. "I am you," the wolf answered. Its voice. Her voice. Strong and ancient and completely new. "And you are me. We are whole at last, little sister. Now, rise." "It's starting," Corin said, and the 10 warriors stepped back, giving her space. Sarah tried to stand, and fell to her knees as her bones began to shift. But not snap. Not the painful breaking she'd endured in every other transformation. This was fluid, like water becoming ice, like metal being forged. Her bones flowed into new shapes, lengthening, strengthening, becoming something far greater than they'd ever been. Her skin prickled as fur emerged, not the dull gray-brown of before, but gold. Shining, luminous gold that seemed to capture and reflect light even in the dim barn. It spread across her body in waves, thick and soft and beautiful. The transformation continued. She grew, and grew, and grew. Her perspective shifted as she rose upward, her body expanding until she was larger than Corin's wolf form, larger than any alpha she'd ever seen. Power erupted from her core, washing outward in a wave that made the barn shake. The storm outside seemed to pause. Every wolf in the space, 10 warriors who'd seen countless battles, dropped to one knee, their heads bowed. Sarah stood on 4 paws, and the world had never been so clear. She could smell everything, the individual scents of each warrior, the old wood of the barn, the storm outside, and beyond that, miles away, the Silvercrest pack lands. She could hear heartbeats, breathing, the whisper of wind through fur. And her eyes, she could see them reflected in a piece of broken mirror leaning against the wall. They glowed gold, like molten metal, like the sun. Her wolf was massive, majestic, powerful. She threw back her head and howled. The sound shook the barn, rolled across the landscape, echoed through the mountains. It was a howl of rage for years stolen, of grief for a childhood lost, of joy for freedom finally found. It was a declaration and a promise and a warning all at once. The storm answered. Lightning split the sky. Thunder boomed. When the howl faded, Sarah shifted back, the transformation smooth and effortless now. She stood naked in the center of the barn, and someone, Nessa, immediately wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. Sarah looked down at her hands. They were steady, strong. She felt her wolf inside her. No longer weak and whimpering, but powerful and present. A partner. A part of her she'd never known was missing. What? She looked up at Corin, who still knelt. What am I? He rose, and his expression held both pride and reverence. You were the Golden Luna, the matriarch, the one foretold in prophecy 500 years ago. Another warrior, an older man with gray in his dark hair and kind eyes, stepped forward. I'm Aldrich. I've studied the ancient texts my whole life. The prophecy speaks of you. When the weakest is broken, the mightiest will rise. When betrayal severs blood, the matriarch will open her eyes. She will come clothed in gold and crowned in power. She will stand when all others fall in the final hour. The moon goddess knew, Thalia added softly. She knew Donovan would reject you. She knew it was the only way to break the binding your parents created. She's been guiding everything toward this moment. Sarah's mind spun. But why? Why me? Why bind my power at all? Corin's expression grew grave. Because the last matriarch was killed 500 years ago in a war that nearly destroyed all wolfkind. The elders feared another would rise and bring that war back. When you were born and the signs appeared, the golden aura, the power reading that nearly killed your mother during pregnancy, they wanted you dead. My parents, Sarah's voice broke. Loved you enough to hide you, Corin finished. They made a terrible choice born of fear, but it kept you alive until the binding could break naturally. They sacrificed your happiness for your safety. They sacrificed my life, Sarah said bitterly. 23 years of being treated like nothing. Yes, Corin didn't soften it, and they'll answer for that. But first, you need to learn what you can do. Because Sarah, you're not just strong. You're the strongest wolf born in half a millennium. You have abilities the rest of us can only dream of. Jax grinned again. Want to find out what they are? Despite everything, the pain, the confusion, the earth-shattering revelations, Sarah felt a smile tug at her lips. Yes, she said. I really do. The days that followed were a revelation. The storm cleared, leaving the world blanketed in snow. The Unchained had a camp deeper in the borderlands, a place that existed between territories, claimed by no pack. It was protected by ancient magic and the reputation of Corin's warriors, who were known across all Wolflands as the most elite fighting force in existence. Sarah learned they'd been searching for her specifically since the prophecy was made. Each member of the Unchained had taken an oath to the moon goddess to protect and serve the matriarch when she finally arose. They'd spent centuries watching, waiting, following threads of possibility and fate. We knew you'd be in the Northern Territories, Aldrich explained one evening as they sat around a fire. The prophecy said you'd be born under the harvest moon to parents who'd betray you to save you. We've had scouts watching every pack for decades. When your birth was registered and your power reading was suspiciously absent, we knew. You've been watching me my whole life? Sarah asked. From a distance, Corin confirmed. He sat across the fire, his pale eyes reflecting the flames. We couldn't interfere. The binding had to break naturally. but we made sure you were never in mortal danger. Those rogue wolves that got too close to Silvercrest territory when you were 15. We eliminated them before they reached the pack. Sarah didn't know how to feel about that. Protected her whole life by strangers, while her own pack tormented her. But she didn't have time to dwell on it. There was too much to learn. Her abilities were staggering. First, the command. Her alpha voice could force submission from any wolf, regardless of their rank. When she'd tested it on Corin, gently at his request, he'd gone to one knee instantly, unable to resist. "No alpha-born could make me kneel," he'd said afterward, somewhat awed. "The matriarch's command is absolute." Second, the empathy. She could feel the emotions of other wolves, sense their intentions, even soothe their pain. When Nessa had a nightmare one night, thrashing and crying out, Sarah had gone to her and simply placed a hand on her shoulder. Peace had flowed from her touch, and Nessa had calmed immediately. "That's incredible," Thalia had whispered. "Healing magic is rare. Emotional healing is almost unheard of." Third, the bond. Not a mate bond, but something different. Sarah could sense each member of the Unchained, feel their presence even when they were miles away. The connection strengthened each day, until she knew without asking when Jax was on patrol, when Nessa was training, when Aldrich was reading in his tent. "It's the pack bond," Corin explained, "but magnified. You're not just our leader, Sarah. You're becoming our center, our anchor. What alphas have in miniature, you have in full measure." And fourth, the transformation itself. Each time she shifted, it became smoother, faster, more natural. Her golden wolf form was twice the size of a normal alpha, and when she ran through the snow-covered forest, she was faster than anything had a right to be. The world blurred around her. The wind sang in her fur, and her wolf sang back, joyful and free. The training wasn't just about power, though. It was about control. "You could kill someone by accident if you're not careful," Thalia warned during one session. They were working on her empathic projection. "Your emotions are powerful. They can overwhelm others. You need to learn to shield." Sarah practiced for hours each day, shielding her emotions, controlling her command voice, moderating her strength when sparring. The Unchained were patient teachers, each one bringing their own expertise. Nessa taught her combat. "You're strong, but strength means nothing without skill." She demonstrated by flipping Sarah over her shoulder, despite the size difference. "Learn to use your opponent's strength against them." Jax taught her tracking. "Your senses are enhanced beyond anything normal. You can track a wolf through running water if you know what you're doing." He'd blindfolded her and made her hunt him through the forest by scent alone. She'd found him in 20 minutes. Aldrich taught her history, the politics of the wolf packs, the territories, the ancient laws that governed their kind. "You'll need to know these if you're to lead," he'd said. "Power without knowledge is just destruction." And Corin taught her everything else. Strategy. Leadership, the weight of command. "You'll make decisions that cost lives," he said one evening. They stood on a ridge overlooking the valley, the moon bright above them. "You'll have to choose between mercy and justice, between what's right and what's necessary. That's what it means to lead." Sarah looked at him. Over the weeks, she'd come to understand that Corin was more than just the commander of her guard. He was wise, patient, and carried a sadness in his eyes that spoke of loss. "Did you know the last matriarch?" she asked. His expression shifted, grief flickering across it. "I did. I was young, barely a century old. She was magnificent, fierce, kind. She tried to unite all the packs under one banner, to end the territorial wars that were killing thousands. But the alphas feared her power. They banded together and killed her. And you've spent 500 years waiting for me? I swore an oath. Corin's eyes met hers. To protect the next matriarch with my life. To serve her as I failed to serve the last. Every member of the Unchained carries a similar oath. That's a long time to wait, Sarah said softly. You're worth it. His voice was certain. I've watched you these past weeks, Sarah. The way you care for each member of the Guard. The way you push yourself to learn. The compassion you show even after everything you've suffered. You're going to be an exceptional leader. Perhaps even greater than the last. Something shifted between them in that moment. The bond, the pack bond that connected her to all the Unchained, pulsed stronger with Corin. Not a mate bond, exactly. Something different. Something chosen rather than fated. But before Sarah could explore that feeling, a howl split the night. It came from the east. Urgent. Warning. That's Jax, Corin said, already moving. He's on patrol. Something's wrong. They ran, Sarah shifting mid-stride. Her golden wolf ate up the distance, and the rest of the Unchained converged from different directions, all of them responding to the same call. They found Jax at the eastern border, his wolf form tense, hackles raised. He shifted as they approached. Scout, he reported. From Silvercrest. I caught him watching the camp. He got away before I could stop him. Corin cursed. They know you're alive. Sarah shifted back, her heart pounding. What does that mean? It means, Nessa said grimly, appearing from the trees with 2 other guards. They're going to come for you. Donovan can't afford to have a rejected mate alive and powerful. It makes him look weak. Let them come, Sarah said, and her wolf growled in agreement. The anger she'd been holding back for weeks surged forward. I'm not hiding anymore. Corin looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. So be it. But we do this smart. We choose the ground. We choose the terms. He turned to the others. Call everyone back. We prepare for war. They came 3 days later. The Unchained scouts reported a war party leaving Silvercrest at dawn. 25 wolves, all warriors, led by Alpha Donovan himself. They'd be at the borderlands by midday. Sarah stood in the center of the camp, the 10 members of the Unchained around her. Over the weeks, they'd become more than her guards. They were her family, her pack in truth. You could leave, Corin said quietly. We could relocate, avoid this confrontation. No, Sarah's voice was steady. I'm done running, done hiding. If Donovan wants to fight, then we fight. You understand, Aldrich said carefully, that this changes everything. The moment you stand against an alpha publicly, every pack in the Northern Territories will know you exist. They'll know what you are. Good. Sarah smiled, and there was steel in it. Let them know, Jax whooped. That's our matriarch. They chose an open clearing a mile from camp. It had tactical advantages. High ground on one side, forest on 3 others, and most importantly, it was on neutral territory. No pack could claim law was broken. Sarah stood in the center, Corin at her right hand, Thalia at her left. The other 8 Unchained were spaced around the clearing's edge, seemingly relaxed, but ready to move in an instant. The Silvercrest war party approached through the trees, their scents reaching Sarah before she saw them. 25 wolves, all in human form, armed with silver-edged blades and faces set for battle. Donovan led them. His scent, forest and embers, ozone and steel, was stronger now, pumped up with aggression. He'd grown his hair longer, she noticed distantly. Leora walked at his side, her cinnamon iron blood scent sharp and eager. Behind them, Sarah's parents, Matthias and Elena, their faces carefully neutral. The war party stopped at the clearing's edge. For a long moment, nobody spoke. Then Donovan's eyes found Sarah, and shock flickered across his face. She understood why. She'd been broken, defeated, dressed in rags when he'd last seen her. Now she stood tall in leather armor the Unchained had provided, her hair braided back, her bearing confident. But more than that, she radiated power. It rolled off her in waves, undeniable and vast. "You're alive," Donovan said, and there was something in his voice. Surprise? Regret? Disappointed? Sarah asked. Her voice was calm. Cool. Nothing like the scared Omega who'd begged for mercy weeks ago. Donovan shook his head. "You're different. I'm finally myself." Sarah smiled. "Thank you for that, by the way. Your rejection broke the binding that kept my true nature hidden. You did me a favor." Leora stepped forward, her beautiful face twisted with fury. "You should be dead. How dare you?" "Silence." Sarah didn't raise her voice, didn't shout, but her command rolled across the clearing like thunder, and Leora's mouth snapped shut. Her eyes wide with shock as her wolf submitted against her will. Several of the Silvercrest warriors stumbled back, their wolves responding to a power they'd never felt before. "You want to know what I am, Donovan?" Sarah took a step forward. "I'm the Golden Luna, the matriarch, the one foretold in prophecy 500 years ago, the one your pack would have killed as an infant if they'd known." "That's impossible," Donovan said, but his voice wavered. "Is it?" Sarah gestured to Corin. "Tell them who you are." Corin stepped forward, and his presence made even Alpha Donovan's most powerful warriors shift nervously. "I am Corin, commander of the Unchained. We've served the matriarch lineage for 5 centuries, and we've been waiting for her." He nodded to Sarah. "For her. The Unchained are a legend," Beta Marcus spoke up from behind Donovan. "Children's stories." "Really?" Nessa called from the clearing's edge. "Want to test that theory?" The threat hung in the air. Donovan looked around the clearing, his mind clearly working. He'd brought 25 warriors. The Unchained numbered only 10. But something in the way Corin's people held themselves, the quiet confidence, the lack of fear, it gave him pause. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "Nothing from you," Sarah said. "This land is mine now. The Borderlands. I'm claiming it as my territory. You're here to acknowledge that." "You can't claim territory," Leora snapped, having found her voice again. "You're just an Omega." She didn't get to finish. Sarah shifted. The transformation took seconds. One moment, a woman. The next, a massive golden wolf that towered over every warrior present. Her fur shimmered in the afternoon sun. Her eyes glowed like molten gold, and the power that radiated from her made the air itself seem to vibrate. The Silvercrest wolves dropped to defensive crouches, fear scent flooding the clearing. Sarah shifted back just as quickly, her voice calm. "I'm not just anything anymore, Leora, and if you insult me again, we'll have a problem." Leora's hand went to the blade at her belt. "You dare threaten me?" She lunged. It was stupid, impulsive, born of rage and fear and wounded pride. Leora crossed the clearing in a blur of speed, her blade aimed at Sarah's heart. Sarah caught her wrist mid-strike. The sound of bones grinding together was audible. Leora gasped in pain, her blade dropping from nerveless fingers. "I wasn't threatening," Sarah said softly, her golden eyes locked on Leora's. "I was promising." She released Leora's wrist and, almost casually, backhanded her across the face. Leora flew backward, hit the ground, and didn't get up. She lay there, conscious but stunned, blood trickling from her split lip. The entire Silvercrest war party froze. "Anyone else?" Sarah asked the clearing at large. Nobody moved. "Good." Sarah looked at Donovan. "Your mistake, and it was a mistake, wasn't just rejecting me. You humiliated me, cast me out to die, laughed while you did it. You didn't just refuse a mate, You tried to murder the matriarch." Donovan's face had gone pale. "I didn't know." "That's not an excuse." Sarah's voice hardened. "But it's also not why you're here. You came to kill me because you thought I was a threat to your authority. So let me be clear. I am a threat. To every alpha who rules through fear and cruelty. To every pack that treats its omegas as slaves. To the old ways that keep our kind divided and weak." She let that sink in. Then she gestured, and the Unchained stepped forward. One by one, they shifted. Their true forms were revealed. Not normal wolves, not even the oversized wolves of their human forms. These were dire wolves, ancient guardians from the old times, each one standing tall as a horse, their fur marked with silver patterns that glowed with magic, their eyes reflecting centuries of life. The Silvercrest warriors fell back, genuine terror on their faces. "This," Sarah said into the stunned silence, "is power. True power. And if you stand against me, this is what you'll face." Donovan stared. His alpha confidence had crumbled. He looked at Sarah, really looked at her, and for the first time, she saw recognition in his eyes. Recognition and regret. "Mercy," he said, and dropped to one knee. "I beg for mercy." The admission seemed to break something in the rest of his warriors. One by one, they knelt. Even Leora, still bleeding, struggled to her knees and bowed her head. Sarah walked to where Donovan knelt. She could kill him. The power sang in her veins, urging her to end the threat, to take revenge for every humiliation, every wound. Her wolf growled in agreement, but as she looked down at him, she remembered something Corin had said. "You'll have to choose between mercy and justice." "Stand up," she said. Donovan rose slowly, his eyes wary. "You rejected me," Sarah said. "In front of the entire pack. You cast me out to die. By pack law, I could challenge you for your territory. I could kill you where you stand." She paused. "But I'm not going to." Hope flickered in his eyes. "Instead," Sarah continued, "you're going to return to Silvercrest. You're going to call a pack meeting. And you're going to tell them what happened here. You're going to tell them what I am. And then you're going to announce new laws." "What laws?" Donovan's voice was hoarse. "No Omega is to be mistreated. Any wolf found abusing those weaker than them will answer to me personally. The borderlands are under my protection now. Any wolf, rogue or pack, who seeks refuge here will find it." Sarah's eyes glowed gold. "And you're going to send my parents to me. They have answers to give." "And if I refuse?" Donovan asked, though they both knew the answer. "Then I'll take Silvercrest by force, replace you with an alpha who will listen, and install the laws myself." Sarah smiled without humor. "Your choice." Donovan was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I'll do as you ask." "Swear it," Sarah commanded, and her alpha voice rolled through him. "On your power, as alpha, swear you'll uphold these laws." "I swear," Donovan gasped out, unable to resist. "On my power, as alpha of Silvercrest, I'll uphold your laws." The oath settled into place, binding and magical. Sarah stepped back. "Take your wolves and go. You're not welcome in my territory." The Silvercrest warriors scrambled to their feet, gathering their injured. Leora had to be supported by two others, her face already swelling from Sarah's strike. As they turned to leave, Donovan looked back. "Sarah, I'm sorry. For what it's worth." "It's worth very little," Sarah said. "But I accept it nonetheless. Now go." They left, filing through the trees, their fear scent lingering long after they'd disappeared. Sarah stood in the center of the clearing as the Unchained shifted back to human form and gathered around her. "That was well done," Corin said quietly. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. Justice without vengeance, the mark of a true leader. It doesn't feel satisfying, Sarah admitted. It's not supposed to. Thalia came up on her other side. Mercy rarely does. But you did the right thing. Sarah looked around at her guard, her family, and felt the pack bond between them pulse with pride and affection. I am Sarah Blackthorn, she said to the forest, to the sky, to the world. Once rejected, once cast aside, once called the weakest. But I am those things no longer. She shifted, letting her golden wolf rise, and threw back her head to howl. I am the Golden Luna. I am the matriarch, and this is my territory. The Unchained joined her, 10 ancient dire wolves howling in harmony, their voices carrying across the mountains, announcing to every pack within 100 miles that something new had risen, that the matriarch had returned, that the old order was over. 3 days later, Matthias and Elena Blackthorn arrived at the Borderlands camp, alone, as Sarah had commanded. She met them in her tent, Corin standing guard outside, his presence a comfort, even though she didn't need protection. Her parents looked older than she remembered. Matthias's hair had gone gray. Elena had lines around her eyes that hadn't been there weeks ago. They stood before her, neither kneeling nor confident, and the scent of their fear was palpable. Tell me, Sarah said without preamble, why you did it. Matthias spoke first. You were born during a lunar eclipse on the harvest moon. The moment you drew breath, every wolf within 10 miles felt it. A pulse of power so strong, it knocked some unconscious. The healers said you'd be the strongest wolf in generations. The elders came that night, Elena continued, her voice shaking. They said you had to die. That power like yours would bring war, would draw enemies, would destroy the pack. They were going to take you and kill a newborn. Sarah's voice was ice. Yes, Matthias's jaw tightened. We refused. We fought. But we were beta rank, not powerful enough to stand against the elders. So we made a deal. The witch, Sarah said. Elena nodded. She could bind your power. Make you appear weak, insignificant. The elders agreed. If we could make you seem like a normal Omega, they'd let you live. So we did it. We let her cast the spell. You took my life from me. Sarah's hands clenched. 23 years of torture, of being treated like nothing. You let me suffer rather than fight for me. We kept you alive, Matthias said, and there was grief in his voice. Every day I watched you suffer, and it killed me. But you were alive. You were breathing. You were safe. I wasn't safe, Sarah snapped. I was miserable. I wanted to die half the time. Is that what you wanted? No. Elena stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. We wanted you happy. We wanted you whole. But we were weak and afraid, and we made the wrong choice. We know that now. We've known it for years. But we didn't know how to fix it. The mate bond, Sarah said. It was the anchor for the binding. The witch said it would break when you found true love, Matthias explained. We hoped, that when you found your fated mate, the bond would be strong enough to shatter the spell, and you'd be free. We never imagined he'd reject you, Elena whispered. Never thought any alpha could be that foolish. Sarah looked at them, at her parents who'd made an impossible choice born of fear and love. She wanted to hate them. Part of her did. But another part, the part that was becoming the matriarch, understood. You broke me to save me, she said quietly. You gave me a life of pain to keep me from death. Yes, Matthias met her eyes. And we'd do it again, because the alternative was losing you entirely. But that doesn't make it right. It doesn't erase your suffering, and we will spend the rest of our lives trying to atone, if you'll let us." The tent was silent except for Elena's quiet sobs. Sarah stood and walked to them. They flinched, expecting punishment. Instead, she pulled them both into an embrace. "I forgive you," she said, and felt them go still with shock. "I don't forget. I don't excuse. But I forgive you. Because I understand now what it means to make impossible choices, and because you're my parents, and despite everything, you did love me." Elena collapsed into sobs, clinging to Sarah. Matthias's shoulders shook. "Thank you," he managed. "Thank you." When they finally pulled apart, Sarah looked at them seriously. "I'm claiming the borderlands as my territory. I'm building something new here, a place where wolves aren't judged by their rank, where strength isn't the only thing that matters. I want you here. I need wolves who understand what it's like to make hard choices. But you'll have to earn your place." "We will," Elena said immediately. "Whatever you need." "Good." Sarah smiled slightly. "Because I have a feeling things are about to get very complicated." She was right. Over the following weeks, word spread through the Northern Territories. The matriarch had returned, the Golden Luna had risen, and wolves began to arrive at the borderlands. Rogues, omegas, wolves who'd been cast out or abused, seeking the refuge Sarah had promised. She welcomed them all. Her territory grew. Cabins were built. Farms were started. The Unchained trained new warriors from among the refugees, teaching them that strength came in many forms. And through it all, Sarah felt herself growing into her role. She settled disputes with wisdom that surprised even her. She healed old wounds between wolves who'd been enemies. She began to build not just a pack, but a community. Corin was beside her through all of it. His presence became essential, not because she needed protection, but because he understood leadership in a way no one else did. The bond between them grew stronger, until one night, under the full moon, he asked her a question. "The moon goddess gives us fated mates," he said, as they stood watching the celebration below. Wolves dancing, singing, living free for the first time. "But she also gives us choice. I'm not your fated mate, Sarah. Donovan was, and that bond is broken beyond repair." "I know," Sarah said quietly. "But there's another kind of bond," Corin continued. "A chosen bond. It's rarer, requires both parties to willingly forge it, but it's said to be even stronger because it's built on choice rather than fate." He turned to face her, his pale eyes serious. "I'd like to offer you that bond, if you'll have it." Sarah's heart raced. "Corin, I'm not asking lightly," he said. "I'm 500 years old. I've loved and lost. I've waited centuries for you, not because of prophecy, but because the moment I saw you, broken and dying in that barn, I knew you were the one I'd been searching for. Not the matriarch. You, Sarah Blackthorne, who chose mercy over vengeance, who forgave her parents despite their betrayal, who sees worth in every wolf regardless of rank." "Yes," Sarah said, and her wolf howled in joy. "Yes, I'll forge the bond with you." They did it that night, under the full moon, with the Unchained as witnesses. It was a simple ceremony. Hands clasped, promises spoken, and then power flowing between them as the bond locked into place. Not golden like a fated bond, but silver, shining and strong and entirely their own. When they kissed, the pack erupted in cheers. But peace never lasted. 2 weeks after her bonding ceremony, Sarah woke from a nightmare of blood and fire, her wolf growling a warning. "Something's coming," she told Corin as they dressed in the pre-dawn darkness. "What?" he asked, already alert. "I don't know. But it's big. And it's dangerous." She wasn't wrong. The blood moon rose that evening, staining the sky crimson, and with it came a howl from the north, ancient, terrible, and filled with malevolence. Aldrich burst into Sarah's cabin, his face pale. "The texts," he gasped. "I should have realized." The prophecy didn't say the matriarch would bring peace. It said she'd rise when war returned. "What war?" Sarah demanded. "The one that killed the last matriarch." Aldrich's hands shook. 500 years ago, she united the packs, but something else united against her. An ancient enemy. We thought they were destroyed, but another howl split the night. Closer now. "They're back," Aldrich whispered. "The corrupted. And they're coming for you." Sarah stood, her golden eyes flashing. Around her, the Unchained gathered, their dire wolf forms emerging. Corin took her hand, his grip steady. "Let them come," Sarah said, her voice carrying across the camp. "I'm not the weak Omega they expect. I'm not even the broken woman who was cast out to die. I am the Golden Luna. I am the matriarch, and I will not fall." The blood moon shone overhead. And in the distance, the enemy howled their approach. The real war was just beginning. And so Sarah Blackthorn's journey transformed from a tale of rejection and despair into one of power, purpose, and destiny. She'd been cast aside as worthless, left to die in the snow. But from those ashes, a queen had risen. She'd faced execution, both literal and metaphorical, and emerged not just alive, but triumphant. She'd learned that true strength wasn't about dominance, but about choosing mercy when vengeance would be easier. That family wasn't always blood, but the wolves who stood beside you when darkness fell. That sometimes the moon goddess's plan required pain, but that pain could forge something unbreakable. The rejected Omega had become the Golden Luna. The weakest had become the mightiest. And though war approached on dark wings, Sarah faced it without fear, because she wasn't alone. She had her chosen mate, her loyal guard, her growing pack of refugees who'd found purpose and hope. And she had herself, the power that had always been there, just waiting to be unleashed. What happens when you rise from the ashes? What happens when the broken become whole? What happens when destiny finally finds the one it's been searching for? You get a story like this. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt underestimated or cast aside? Have you ever discovered strength you didn't know you had? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and your stories inspire me. If you enjoyed Sarah's journey from rejected Omega to Golden Luna, hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by others' opinions. And if you want more stories of power, destiny, and wolves who refuse to stay down when life knocks them over, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Because Sarah's story isn't over. The corrupted are coming. Ancient enemies are stirring. And the real battle for Wolfkind's future is just beginning. We'll see you in the next chapter. Thank you for listening, and remember, the weakest can become the mightiest if they're given the chance to rise.